Alrighty, I just want to make sure before we get started, everyone, today, can you all hear me okay? If you could just let me know in the Q&A box, that would be great. Yes. Okay, wonderful. Thanks, Meredith. I really appreciate it. I was trying to use a headset and it wasn't working. I'm also sharing my screen, everyone, so please let me know if you're having trouble seeing that. And I'm going to go ahead and start the recording so we can get going for today. Thank you so much for being here. And everyone is saying, yes, they can see and hear me. There may be a little bit of noise in the background. I've got a kiddo at home today, long story. So appreciate your patience with that. I'm Hallie Crawford, certified career coach and founder of Create Your Career Path. And I'm really excited to be here with you all today for the next 28 minutes for our half an hour webinar. And what we're going to be talking about today is if you're thinking about a career move, or if you're not sure you need to make a move and need to figure that out. And also just being prepared for changes that may come up with your current employer in terms of the economy and all of that. We just really want people to be as prepared in advance as they can. So we're going to talk about how to get ahead of the curve. And the advice that we're going to be giving you all today is advice that we give to all of our clients. This is our website at the top. I've been coaching and training for over 22 years now. And absolutely love what I do, and our coaches and resume writers on our team do as well. I have an undergraduate degree from Vanderbilt University and the University of Illinois. And I was just lucky to find my passion and career path in my mid-20s. So I'll be 50 next year, and we want to help people find jobs that make them want to jump out of bed in the morning or adjust their current job so that it does that for you, et cetera, et cetera. All right. So the first thing that we want to say here is obviously, gosh, COVID has really changed the way we work in some ways for the better. I think in some ways there's pros and cons to everything. And things are not going to go back to the way it was exactly before, just because, it can't. We've learned some new things. And what we're finding now after this great reshuffle and the great resignation is some people are feeling this sense of the great regret. There's all these greats floating around out there. That they took a new job, maybe that they weren't sure was the right thing, or they thought it might be the right thing and it turned out not to be. And what we're telling people, regardless of your situation, is that it's really important for us to find ways to remain engaged at work long-term and play to your strengths on a regular basis, and really thinking hard about, what our career values are at this point in our career and kind of post-COVID too. What have we learned about ourselves based on, or in terms of what's really important to us? Because I'm sure you all have heard too about this theme or idea of quiet quitting, where people are kind of phoning it in at work a little bit more because they're concerned about work-life balance, which we want people to be concerned about that, but you really can't phone it in if you want to stay at your job and get ahead. So be careful with that and kind of balance it correctly. The three things we're going to be talking about today are defining fulfillment and strengths first. I'm going to add that to it. Reviewing our ideal career model to help you really figure out what is the right next thing for you and what would be realistic as well. And then also creating your plan, because we have to have a plan. Without a plan, it's just a wish or a dream or whatever it is. And we want you to have both, but the plan is important. And the first thing that we want to say to you too, before we get into our tips here, is that we always share with our clients that no job is going to be perfect. We want you to have the right perspective on things. No job is going to be perfect every single second of the day. Although I love what I do and feel like, I am, and our coaches are in the right place, and, we're following our passion, et cetera. There are things that we don't like about our jobs. That's just part of life and how it works. So don't try to feel like, okay, if I could just find this one perfect job, needle in a haystack thing, everything would be great. We want you to think about the next step for you as instead the good stuff so far outweighs the bad stuff that I barely notice the bad stuff. And that's how it is for us and for me, that the things that I don't like as much, those aren't things that I have to do quite as much as a business owner or, as a public speaker, et cetera. So you're looking for something that the majority of your time you're playing to your strengths and you enjoy what you do. And maybe like 10 or even 25%, 25 is, I think, too much, but 20% of the time, maybe you're not doing things that are as enjoyable for you, but you just have to in order to have that job. The other thing that we find too is that while you can find direction and fulfillment and have a job that you actually really, really enjoy, is that you want to think about, okay, how much time do I need to spend in each area of strength, or, what are going to be my top most enjoyable tasks? And when you are at choice, when you're choosing where to compromise. So for example, you might say to yourself, this career path is really, really great for me, but I'm not willing to compromise on the salary or whatever. So I'm going to have to take that off my list. That's fine. When you're choosing where you're compromising, you will feel a lot better at the end of the day, because instead of feeling sucked into something and you didn't make the choice, it was out of your control, versus saying, I will take this job over here, even though, let's say, maybe it doesn't pay quite as much, or the location isn't ideal for me, but everything else is so good that I'm going to choose to compromise in that one area. So that's the right perspective that we want you all to have. It's not perfection. You are going to have to compromise, but when you're at choice where you're compromising, you will feel 100% better. Let's talk about our first tip in defining fulfillment, and also thinking about your strengths too, and how you feel about things now versus pre-COVID, because a lot of us, I think, discovered that our values system may have changed a little bit, and what is a priority for us and really, really important in our jobs may be different than it was beforehand. We've had clients say to us the gamut of things from, I really want to go back to the office because I realized that my coworkers were one of the main things I actually liked about my job. And other people were saying, how do I tell my boss I never want to see her again in person? Haha, because I want to work remotely for the rest of my career. Things have changed. So we want you to take a step back, and it doesn't have to take that long, but for a few minutes, take a look at our career model, and we'll get into this a little bit more in our next step. But think for us first about fulfillment and strengths a little bit more, okay? The reason why we want you to think about fulfillment first and then strength second and the rest of the model after that is fulfillment is the most difficult thing for us to define. It impacts all aspects of the career model and all aspects of our career fit and satisfaction. So for example, if we're not being paid in a way that we feel we should, we're not going to be fulfilled, and vice versa. If we're not playing to our strengths and leveraging those on a regular basis, we're not going to be fulfilled. So fulfillment influences everything, okay? It impacts us personally too. And one of the things that we found, understandably post-COVID, is people are demanding more, like, I want to enjoy my work. And I can demand that a little bit more because employers are listening more than they ever have. Now, it is starting to go back to being more of an employer's market, but I don't think we're ever going to go back to the old days, so to speak, pre-COVID, where they just get to call all of the shots. I think times have changed in that way. And when you're thinking about if you need to be prepared for a possible change, like if you're concerned about getting let go or something like that, you also want to be thinking about the model as well to be prepared for what might happen. So you can say, okay, cool. What would be fulfilling and rewarding for me? Yes, absolutely. But I got to get really clear again and in touch with what my strengths and my experience is. What do I bring to the table so that I'm ready to go if I need to conduct a job search and I understand what I would be most qualified for. Okay, let's dig into the fulfillment piece just a little bit more in the next couple of slides to show you how to identify that for you. So fulfillment is kind of one of those esoteric things that for some of us, understandably, it's hard to define. And one of the ways you can start to define what does fulfillment mean to me, is it a sense of achievement or accomplishment? Or do I really want to help people with something specific in their lives or whatever it is? You can dig underneath some of your dreams, the current dreams, childhood dreams, even your interests or passions outside of work. And those can give you clues to what some of your values are. So for example, if you're a photographer or like photography on the side, you might say to yourself, okay, what am I drawn to about that? Even though that's not a good career path for me, it's not practical. What is it about that for me? Like, it's about the creativity. It could be about creating beauty for other people. Whatever it is, those are possible values that you may want to infuse or have present in your next career path. The reason why there's a mermaid on this slide is I grew up in Florida and we would go to Weeki Wachee all the time because it was close enough by. And as a kid, I wanted to be a mermaid. I thought that was the coolest thing going. And as an adult, I was like, okay, that's probably not the best career path for me because it doesn't fit with all of the pieces of the career model, right? Okay, fine. But when I looked back at that childhood dream, I was able to identify some current values as an adult that I actually still have that were present there. That this value of risk to me as a kid, that seemed kind of risky because they, were swimming underwater and their legs were tied up. Ooh, that seems kind of like a risk, but in a cool way to me. Being a mermaid at that time for me was like, there was a little bit of like entertaining people, but educating them at the same time. And I have a value of risk as a person and as a professional still to this day, as well as a value of creativity and beauty and educating people in that way, which is why I love doing these webinars. That was represented already as a child to me in that childhood dream. So dig underneath those dreams and outside passions. The other ways you can define fulfillment too are to journal for like 5 or 10 minutes. Doesn't have to take that long about how you define success now, post-COVID. What does it mean to you now versus what it meant to you before COVID? Think about and create maybe a vision board of your ideal day at work and what qualities does your ideal day have? What do you want it to have? Because that can help you create a picture too of what you want. And you may come up with some new ideas there and new values. And the third thing you can do, and we don't do polls in our short webinars, everybody. So we're going to skip over that, just by the way. You will get a recording of today, FYI too. The third thing that we want you to do is you can do like a personal peak experience exercise to identify what your current values are. And a personal peak experience is a peak experience that you've had in your life that you felt lit up or, like everything was rocking and rolling and you just felt really, really good. It could be a moment in time. It could be a period of time. It doesn't matter, but we do want you to think about a personal experience. And we want you to write about it and then share it with someone, a coach like us, a friend or family member that you trust, because they can help pull out some of the values present or that they see from that peak experience when you're thinking about what was cool about it for you. So the question you want to ask yourself is, okay, A, what is my personal peak experience? Doesn't have to be I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, by the way. We've had clients say anything from a trip to Europe to I was the high school editor of my yearbook. Her peak experience means you felt good at the time, and write out what was cool about that experience for you, because that can be clues to some of your values and things that you may want to try to incorporate into your next career path. Okay. Now, what we want you to consider now, given COVID, given the economy, everything else going on, is again, what has changed for you because of COVID and what has changed for your industry? Is it going really well? Is it kind of struggling? And so you feel like you need to be prepared for the next step as a result. And in the middle of this next slide here, some of the things you want to be thinking about to prepare yourself are, okay, what strengths do I want to continue to leverage versus I don't want to really use those strengths anymore. I want to develop some new ones or change things up a little bit. And you also want to think about too, what strengths have you gained or showcased, like really flexed that muscle over the past couple of years too, during COVID. We've had clients say, you know what, I was able to turn my team or department around to remote work in 5 days. And we had them put that on their resume. So these are things that in this new world of work, where some of us may be working at least a little bit remotely, how have you been able to demonstrate that you can do that effectively? Because that's part of how you need to sell yourself to the next employer. And third, on the right here, as we think about fulfillment and what's meaningful to us too, we've had people say different things to us from, I want to have a bigger impact on an organization, or I want to have a bigger impact on society or on other people. What's meaningful to us has changed over time because of everything that's changed during the course of the past couple of years. So some people are saying, I want more mentoring in my job. Some people are saying, I want to have a greater social impact. So I want to look at nonprofits or foundations or social entrepreneurship, for example. For some people, they might say, I don't have to have a mentoring type of job. I'm not qualified to go into training and development or an HR, but I want to have that be an element of how I approach my job. And that's okay too. So this is all of the pieces, or these are all of the pieces that we want you to be thinking about when you're thinking about what your next step might be in terms of what's going to be the right fit, but also how to sell yourself effectively. I know some of you are current clients with us, which is great. Thanks for being here today. And for those of you that are not, we always offer a free consultation to give you some advice and have you learn about coaching. I know someone on the call today has already signed up for that for us next week on Monday, which is great. But if any of you are not and would like to learn more about our coaching services, here's the email to sign up for that. And we are doing running a discount on our services for new clients in this month of August too. So ask us about that. Just send us an email. We'll talk with you about that in the consultation as well. It's our annual back to school sale that we always do. Let's talk about tip number 2 and reviewing the ideal career model. So this is the model that I developed early on in my coaching career about like 19 years ago, give or take, after I'd started my business. And I realized that we needed something really tangible for people to look at to say, okay, what are the things I should be considering? How do I know if a job is going to be the right fit for me? And how do I brainstorm different ideas? These are the 8 things you have to consider. End of story. Fulfillment, we've already talked about. Is this going to have some sense of meaning and reward for you? Even if it's just a sense of accomplishment, like I want to feel like I accomplished something every day and that's all I care about right now, Hallie, that's totally fine. The fulfillment piece is where you put your values. The enjoyment piece on the left is where you think about the tasks that you would like to perform, those tasks that you enjoy performing the most, and kind of how you want your day to play out. Okay. And I'll use me as a quick example with the enjoyment piece. I tend to be pretty good enough at marketing and editing and writing articles, right? Because I was a communications major and at Vanderbilt. But guess what? I had a marketing job when I first got out of graduate school because I was like, okay, I'm good at that. So I'm going to go take the job. Well, the job had a bad work environment. The boss was really, really stressful. And I also realized that, you know what, marketing and communications doesn't honor my top values. I wanted to get a lot more fulfillment out of having like an impact on other people and helping them learn about themselves because authenticity is my number one value. So instead of thinking about, okay, well, I'm good at these 2 things, so I'll go get a job doing that, you need to think about what are the top most enjoyable tasks for me and prioritize those based on what's really important to you and think of your career almost as like a pie, okay? And what's the biggest piece and part I want to play? And then what are the ancillary things? So for me, for example, I get to do a little bit of marketing. I get to do a little bit of writing and editing articles as part of what I do as a coach, but it's not my main job, which is what was part of what was wrong with that other position. I want to do those things sometimes, not all the time. So what could you do all day, every day and not get tired of it is a great question to ask yourself. Then we want to take a look at our strengths. So what are my top 5 strengths? Am I clear on what those are? So if I do have to get into job search mode sooner than later, I can articulate those effectively to an employer. We like the Strengths Finder assessment to help people clarify their strengths if they feel like they need that. We want you to look at your education and experience, like dig underneath what you've done in the past. Were there classes that I took in college that I've forgotten about that I actually really liked? Was there a past experience after college in a volunteer role, for example, that I really enjoyed and I just completely forgot about it? And there's some tasks or things in there that I'd like to bring forward into my current career path. That's where education and experience starts to fit in. And here on the model, by the way, too, is where we start to think about practical considerations. For the jobs that you're currently brainstorming, are you qualified for them? And if you're not quite qualified, are there related jobs that you could be qualified for that are similar, kind of close, but not exactly the same thing that could be viable for you? Then we want you to look at your personality type. Are you introverted? Are you extroverted? Are you more of a leader or more of a behind the scenes type of person? There's no right or wrong with personality type, but your personality type has to be a good fit with the role that you play within your organization, with the team that you're in, and with the work environment. So personality type is a make or break for satisfaction and career fit. If you don't get along with anybody on your team or they don't understand where you're coming from, it's going to be a big problem. You could be in the exact right organization or doing something that's really fulfilling, but if there's a rub there, it's not going to work. You need to change organizations within the same industry. Then we want you to look at work environment. This is the culture of the organization. This is a big one. Are you working in person or remotely or in a hybrid model? And is that okay with you? This is also about the mission and the vision and believing in the leadership there. And then finally, last but absolutely not least, is compensation. Are you going to get paid what you need to get paid? This one is critically important. But as I said a few minutes ago, you don't want to choose your career path based on just what am I good at and am I going to get paid enough? That's what I did when I took the marketing job. And I was missing all of these other pieces. It ended up being really unhappy. And I was crying in the bathroom, honestly, because it was that stressful. So one other thing to say about that is your values, going back to fulfillment, your values and your strengths can be embedded in each piece. And here's what I mean by that. Some of your personality traits could be considered some of your strengths. Some of your strengths could be reflected in your past experience in education. So just know that when you're filling out the career model for yourself, which is an action item that we would like you to take on. If I had to choose one action item from today, it would be to use our ideal career model. Just get the recording and write it out on your own piece of paper or work with us. It's in our workbook, etc., that we sell as a separate thing. But as you're filling this out for yourself, realize that you don't have to be exactly right about like, okay, wait, does this one thing fit into strengths or personality? This model is here just to make sure you cover all of your bases and come up with everything that you need to. It's not about everything fitting perfectly into each box. It's a tool to help you remember, ooh, I do need to think about the work environment, okay? And the reason why these pieces are kind of falling into place like this, people ask us this all the time, is simply because we think of this as a piece by piece, your vision of your ideal career is building upon itself. And the pieces are kind of falling into place. And at the end of it, you get a clear picture of what's right for you from all of these different elements and aspects, which is really important, okay? Finally, we want you to think about creating your plan. So after you have thought about fulfillment and strengths a little bit more and are clear on those things, you have gone through the career model to say, you know, for example, if you're like, I have 2 career path ideas and I need to evaluate both of them, use the model as a checklist. Or if you fall in the camp of, I have no ideas at all, I'm starting from scratch, the model can help you too. So it's, and also actually I should say too, it kind of works on through the whole continuum, is if you're in a career path now and you're like, I think it might be a right fit, but I'm not really sure. Again, the career model can serve as your checklist to be like, okay, yeah, it's pretty much a fit in all of these areas. But let's say, for example, I'm not leveraging one of the strengths I really want to leverage. So you might say to yourself, well, before just tossing this aside and going to another job, could I adjust my position a little bit towards this and how I approach my work? Or could I talk to my boss a little bit more about getting involved in some other projects? Like, we always want you to look first in your own backyard because that's the easiest thing to do. If there are changes you could make there, try that out for the next 3 months. And if that doesn't work, that doesn't cut it, they say no, whatever it is, then fine, it's time to move on. But this can help you be rational, practical about the whole thing versus emotional, which a lot of people are understandably because they're upset and frustrated, okay? All right, so let's go to creating your plan because I backtracked just a little bit. Part of your plan should be thinking about, should I stay or go? We talked about that just a second ago. We don't want you to pull the plug too quickly. We want you to be thoughtful and mindful about your next steps. Get clear on the right next direction. Again, now, before something happens, if you're worried about getting furloughed or laid off, and also if you think you might need to make a change in the new year or whenever it is. And then we also want you to create your plan or add into your plan, I should say, support and accountability. So I'm going to write this plan out and that's great. And I'm going to incorporate what training and experience I need to get for my next step. You know, the critical roles, I mean, you know, the things I need to do in the meantime or the roles that I might need to get along the way to my long-term dream career. I want to start building up my network again and activating my network. But within your plan, you also want to have what could be my blocks to success and how am I going to overcome those, as well as what support and accountability I'm going to get. Because here's the deal, everyone. We have had people time and time again call us. One guy in particular he called us 1 year to the day almost after he talked with us about coaching and said, no, I'm going to try to do this on my own first. 1 year to the day, called us again and said, I haven't done anything about this. And now I'm even more miserable. So the thing that usually happens to people is not because they're not smart. It's not because they don't know how to make a plan or anything like that. It's that they fall prey to their obstacles. We all know we get in our own way, or they didn't get support and accountability for those obstacles and for their action steps. And life happened and they look back again 6 months or a year later and they didn't do anything. So a chunk of what we do as coaches, and obviously there's a lot more to it, but a big part of what we do is that accountability piece and making sure you get out of your own way. Now, when we're talking about your strategic career plan, we always want people to think really long term, but we realize that some of you on the call or listening in may be thinking more short term. So we added in this 6 months. If you're thinking more long term or can do so whenever you can get to that point, we want you to think 5 years out as a start and work backwards and then go, okay, where do I want to be in 5 years, 3 years, 1 year? For those of you more immediate, like where do I want to be in 3 to 6 months? And how do I get there? You incorporate the elements that we talked about in the slide before. It's a good idea to develop a vision of where you want to be, like the vision board, as well as a plan. Include those obstacles, like we said, whether it's procrastination, goal setting, whatever it is, and get some help there. And then once you have a strategic career plan, we want you to create and update it or check and update it quarterly, at least. We have a template that we use with our clients who work with us now. We can share that with you, and our coaches will tailor it to your needs. Or if you want to sign up for, just a session at the beginning, we can help you with that longer term plan. Some of the other things we want you to be thinking about, and then we'll end in a moment here with some suggested action items, is we want you to be the CEO of your career. Think of your job as your best asset, because honestly, your house in some years might be your best asset and making you a lot of money. Okay, great, fine. But at the end of the day, the best asset you have is you, because other things can change. So you treating your job as an asset and being the CEO of your career is really important. Make sure that your goals are always clearly defined. Make sure that you're always thinking about your skills and building your brand and developing that portfolio of experiences and skills. Always, 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 even when you know that your job is not going to go anywhere, you just never know. You want to be always challenged, if nothing else, to feel fulfilled. Make sure that you're taking calculated risks to get ahead and always creating value, seeking opportunities across your organization, building those transferable skills, and thinking about the evolution of your career over time. Always, again, even if your job is cushy, we want you to be thinking about, okay, what's the next step? Not because we want you to be unhappy and waiting for the next shoe to drop, but we want people to be proactive, because sometimes things do happen. And we've had people call us and say, you know what, I've been in my dream job for too long and now I feel stagnant. What do I do next? Because now I'm really stuck. Okay. So if we were to say our suggested action steps, and we're happy to answer any questions in a strategy session, so feel free to set that up. At the bottom there on the right-hand side is our email address, admin@createyourcareerpath.com, and we will send you the recording automatically. But if I had to choose one thing that I would do from today, I would review our ideal career model, because that is the most comprehensive thing that's going to give you the best answers to what you need to do next. And if you feel like, I don't need to look at the whole model, Hallie, I just need to look at certain pieces because that's what's missing for me, totally fine. That works. It's there as a tool to help you be focused and efficient. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. We greatly appreciate your time so much. Feel free to set up a quick call with us if you have specific questions and to learn more about coaching. And we hope this was helpful for you at the end of the day. We love doing these webinars and we appreciate your time. Have a great day, everyone.